Alrighty. Well, it did not take me as long as I thought it was going to actually get ready for this. It actually only took me about 15 minutes to actually properly exegete these scriptures correctly. Now, since some of y'all are new, I'm going to re-go over one key thing here, and then we're gonna implement it. Okay? So I'm going to get y'all to come to the same conclusion that I came to, if I can. We have time. Okay, earlier, a week or two ago, I used the word exegesis. Okay? E-X-E-G-S-I-S. Exegesis. I'm going to give you the definition of it, the proper definition. It's from the Greek, to lead out. Exegesis is a critical explanation or interpretation of a text, particularly a religious text. Traditionally, the term was used primarily for work with the Bible. However, in modern usage, biblical exegesis is used for greater specificity to distinguish it from any other broader critical text explanation. So, this word originally was for biblical use predominantly. It was very rarely used outside of it. And even today, it is still rarely used outside of referring to the Bible. But just to be specific, normally in apologetics, you would say it's biblical exegesis. Now, when you're referring to the Bible, and the Bible is the topic of discussion, you don't need to specify that you're referring to the Bible. It's given. Okay? So, but it's a critical explanation. Okay, it's to take a verse, to break it down. Now, in order to do this correctly, typically, you must examine the previous verse or verses to get the context. Okay? One thing you must always remember when you're reading your Bible, context is king. People will take a verse and apply it way outside of context in a manner that God did not intend it, because they said, it's like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So I can go out and I can go win the gold medal Olympics right now, today, in the 100-meter dash. Because God can do all things through Christ. Well, Christ didn't give me that ability to run that fast. If he had, then yes, I could do it. You know, the verse literally is to mean that anything that God allows to come across your path, any valley that he puts before you, he will give you the strength to walk through that valley. Okay? Back on to the next peak, or little hill in my case sometimes, because we got another valley got to go through. Because it kind of depends. Okay? So people will take verses and use them well outside of context. It's one thing to go seek out, like if I go try to lift 1,000, bench press 1,000 pounds, it's like, no. But I can't go, I can do all things, as it falls on my chest and kills me. It's like, no. So you have to use exegesis to correctly understand the verses that you're trying to understand. Now, anytime you come to a verse that causes you any kind of discomfort, the first thing you need to do is do self-examination. Is this verse convicting me of something? Because something I need to do that I don't want to, something that I used to do, and a reminder of where I came from. You need to do self-reflection first to find out, is this about me? Is the Spirit trying to show me something? The next thing you need to do is to get context for the verse. So you go back to read before and try to follow through. Just make sure what it's talking about before is not description, or is not prescription, but description. Where people get mostly hung up in the Bible is because the Bible will say something, and it's describing something. It's not prescribing something. As an example, I wish I could remember where it was, because I wasn't planning on going this far. This is just how it works sometimes. There was the man whose son died, and He didn't take care of his daughter-in-law like he was supposed to, so she took off her widow's clothes, covered her face and everything. He thought she was a prostitute. He goes into her, says, "Let me come into you." She says, "What will you give me?" He says, "A sheep from my flock," or whatever. She says, "What can I have for a token?" He gives her his signet and his cloak and his staff. And he goes into her, and she gets impregnated by him. Okay? Now, this is legally incest because this is his stepdaughter. I'm sorry, his daughter-in-law. So, in the eyes of God, it's wrong. Now, because it's a story in the Bible, people say, well, look, there's incest in the Bible. Look what God allowed. It's like, no. The Bible is telling you what happened. It's descriptive. It is not saying God told him to go into his daughter-in-law. That would be prescriptive. It's like a prescription. Here's your prescription. Go get it filled. Take one every other day. Take one every 4 hours. Whatever. Something, do it. Description is just telling you what happened. Not that God says it's okay. David killed a man to be with his wife, be with Bathsheba. Not prescription, description. I mean, David killed so many people, he could not build the temple of God. He was God's most beloved out of everybody, and still, his hands were too bloody to build the temple of God. He did some horrible, horrible things. He was an adulterer. He was a murderer. He was unclean. These are not prescriptions. It's not saying it's okay to do this stuff. It's a description. So, I digress. You must always look at the verse that causes you whatever, reflect on yourself, and then get your context. Is this telling me what I should do, or is this just telling me what happened? Okay, you have to make that distinction, because if you don't, you can really wind up in trouble. All right, so we're going to deal with two concepts tonight, free will and predestination. After some careful examinations, I'm not going to detract from anything that I said last time, but I think I can make it more clear. Okay? But the way I'm going to make it more clear is that we're going to go into these verses and we're going to do a step-by-step exegesis so that you guys can see, one, how to properly exegete a scripture, and two, we can kind of see if we all land in the same area together. Okay, here's my free will verse. Out of the New American Standard, it says, "The mind of a man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps." Okay? That's in Proverbs 16:9. Now, Proverbs is our wisdom chapter. Okay? It tells us many, many things. This particular verse is good to understand that the man makes the plan, God guides the steps. I want you to imagine a minefield. Okay? Someone you love is at the other end of that minefield. Your path is to get from here to there, point A to point B. You have made your decision that you're going to do it. You have made your choice. God's going to show you where to step so you don't blow yourself up. That's the best analogy I can give you for that verse. It does not mean God guiding your steps in the direction you have chosen to go. But it's not saying that God chooses how you get there. He just helps you step in the right places when you listen to Him, He'll help you step in the right places to avoid the danger. Every time we do something in life, we go places, whatever it is we're doing. If we are not careful, we can stray I can't really think of a good idea off the top of my head, but the plan of execution to accomplish any task that we set our mind to is where we can get in trouble. Whenever it's like in electricity, when I'm doing electrical work, I can drop a line down that wall and I can put an outlet over there. And if I wire up the other end first, then I can get shocked at this end. Well, experience tells me I tie in the electricity last and I run all my other wires first. That way I don't have to worry about getting shocked on all my plugs I'm putting in. I only got to worry about that one spot. Yeah, I could kill the breaker, but that's too easy. Anyone can do that, right? And I've actually done live wires. It's not hard as long as you're very, very careful and you pay attention to what you're doing. But I'm only going to do it one time and not at each of the outlets I have to install. Well, plus you can't do it at the outlets because you got to tie that wire around it. It will shock you. You have to touch the wire there. But at the J box, I don't have to touch the wire. I can use pliers, touch the plastic, and a wire nut. It's real simple. So, anyway, I digress again. I'm going to have to do that a lot tonight, I have a feeling. So, does that make sense to everybody? Man makes his choice. He chooses with his free will. And God just helps him get along from point A to point B with the choices he has made. Okay. Here's how we know mankind must have free will. And this is our logic exercise for the night. Okay? Without free will, Robbie can shoot me in the face with a shotgun and no one can hold him responsible for it before God. He had no choice. He had to do it because he did not have free will. Only with free will can any murder or any sin, any wrongdoing ever be held accountable or ever be placed on the shoulders of the person who committed the act. Okay? Because if you don't have free will, then they did it because they had to. Which means everything Hitler did, he had no choice. Everything Manson did, he had no choice. Stalin, Saddam Hussein. You could go on on a tirade of names of people, and you could never say he was a bad man. Why? He had no free will. He was a slave to his emotions, just synaptics firing. He couldn't control it. He just killed him because he had to. Okay, so really you have to go one of two routes. Either free will exists, or no one is guilty of anything. They did what they had to do, what they were programmed to do. So then, that should also bring up the question, who's programming them this way? Programs don't write themselves. Trust me, I wish they could sometimes. It'd be a lot easier. Tell the computer, hey, write yourself a program to execute this file at this time on this day. It's like, it blanks at me, then it just flashes. That's all it does, cursor flash. Alright, so I sit down, I start typing, I actually, parentheses, execute, yada, 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 do all the things, and you write out code for it. Well, that's how programs come into existence. From the calculator on your phone to whatever else. Programs do not write themselves. Does everyone understand why free will must exist? It is imperative. You cannot hold anyone responsible without free will.
Does that get back to, like, there's not sin without the law? That because of the law there is sin? Same principle?
I would never say that.
It says that in the Bible, though.
Well, it's not quite in context of what it's referring to.
Without rules, you can't break rules.
Well, what that particular verse is saying is that if you are not aware of the law, you can't be held accountable to the law.
That was just basically what you were just saying.
Well, no, because I do not believe that you must know the law to know right from wrong necessarily. I think that sometimes children who are, have you ever seen two kids? You take a 2-year-old and two 2-year-olds, one black, one white, you put them together, they're going to play. They don't see skin color. They don't see race. They don't see gender. They don't see anything. There's kids, they're going to play. They're going to do what kids do. They don't care about what your name is, your name's funny, your eyes, you got glasses. They don't care. They just don't care. It's not important to them. Because I believe that God has instituted a moral law that is in each and every one of us, that we know right from wrong inherently. Now, that doesn't mean we understand things. We have to teach our children because they don't understand why things are right and wrong. But the basic moral principle, I believe, is ingrained in everybody. If you see one of those same 2-year-olds and mom and dad are fighting, the kid's usually sitting there crying because he knows whatever he's seeing is not right. No one had to tell him, hey, cry, your parents are fighting. No. Mom and dad fighting, the anger between them, the child can feel it and it scares him and it makes them cry. It's like no one had to tell him to cry. I mean, you could find many examples of the same thing. You know, it's like if I were to punch somebody, a kid would be like,